All right. Hello. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Tonight we are talking about episode 714. You didn't get used to it. Written by herself, Diana Gabaldon, and directed by Jan Mathis. I think that's how you say it. I'm Courtney Williams, creator of Outlander Behind the Scenes, and I'm a longtime book fan and a longtime show fan. And I am drinking water. I'm so boring with lemon, hydrating. I got a facial today. And so I'm just keeping the hydrating going. My overall impression, I liked this episode. I wasn't, ready to have babies with it like 712, but I enjoyed it. And I thought there were some real gems in it. There were some parts that lagged for me, but overall, I thought it was enjoyable.
All right. Well, I am Catherine Harmon Toomer, a family medicine physician who is also very much a book fan and a show fan, and I keep them very separate. One, because I read the book so long ago, I don't remember most of what I read. And so I find myself usually questioning whether the show is even close. Um, and then and because of BTS, I've started actually watching with a medical mind, whereas before I often turned it off, mainly because Claire is a physician. And I was like, I want to enjoy this. And I just thought it would take away from that, but actually it doesn't. And my overall impression of this is I thought the writing was really good. I somehow missed that Diana who wrote it. And I was like, oh, finally some good dialogue. And then I was like, oh, so until just now, I didn't realize she had written it because I'm so bad. I don't even look at this. I don't look at any of the credits and all the rest. So that was actually my overall impression was that, oh, this is a good one because the writing is obviously improved quite a bit. And what I'm drinking is I traded in my eggnog and bourbon for echinacea and elderberry tea.
Good for you.
You're boosting.
Mhm.
Nice.
My immunity is that time of year.
Yeah, totally.
My name is Carmen Schmidt, and I write the Outlander Anatomy blog. I'm almost 40 years of teaching gross anatomy and microscopic anatomy to medical students. I'm a professor of anatomy. And so I love the series and the books because of all the medical and science parts of it that I enjoy very much. And when I first started reading them, my daughter and my daughter-in-law got me into it. And they said, you've got to read these books. You will love them. And they were right. I'm drinking eggnog tonight with spiced rum and fresh nutmeg. And so I'll drink for the two ladies that are here.
Although I may switch halfway through.
I know. I have drink envy every week. So I was running around and I just was like, well, it's going to be water again. So.
Oh, you want me to say what I thought of this episode?
I do.
Right? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
I liked it very much. And for the reasons that you both said, the dialogue is superb. And I didn't realize when I first watched it that Diana had written it, but then it made sense because so many loose ends were tied up by succinct precision writing that she's so skilled at. And there's just so many examples throughout this whole episode. It was thrilling to watch it and to see those things be pulled in, because it seems like in other episodes we just slog our way through trying to get forward with the story arc. Then here she just gathered everything up, with her magic that she does, and there it was.
Well, she's done this before, if you guys remember. I can't remember which episode it was, but we said this exact same thing, that she came in and took all these threads. I think it was in season 5, but she took all these threads and made them into a
Yeah.
fabric.
She gathers them up and makes them work.
I mean,
Weaves
if
them
anyone can
together.
do it, it should be her.
Exactly.
So,
Let's go to favorite scenes, Catherine.
ooh, there are a few.
Okay,
My
this-
favorite scene was when Jane was talking to William and she was telling him about how she killed
Harkness.
Harkness. Yeah, that's who it is. Harkness. And then um her sister. And I'm just so bad with names. I wrote it down.
Fanny
Francis.
Fanny.
or
Yes. I
Francis,
wanted to
yeah.
say Fiona. I'm like, no, that's the other lady. But anyway, so when Fanny came and then kissed William's hand, that was my favorite scene.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, I thought
What did you like about it?
what I liked about it, one, that the young lady who plays Fanny is an amazing actor. She steals every scene she's in. I like the
agree.
fact that, one, they have the sisters actually look like sisters. They have very similar facial features. The other is the way William was sort of stern with, concerned with Jane, and then as soon as Fanny came up, he softened, and he was like, and it was almost like, and it's usually what you see when you have someone who has lots of little siblings, or who has, who spends a lot of time around children, but it was like he just softened, and it was so obvious and so well done, and I just thought it was just well acted, that whole scene.
Okay. I agree. That was on my list. It wasn't my top, but once I started going through and picking favorite scenes, I was like, man, this is
There were a
I have a
lot of
lot of them. Yeah. I thought that all 3 of those actors in that scene were very compelling. I didn't think anyone overpowered anybody else. When Jane, the actress is Sylvia Presente, when she was talking, you really got drawn into what she was saying. It was very, I think it was straight from the book, but it was really well delivered and believable. Did you guys notice that she seemed to have red hair in that scene?
Mm.
Like,
Yes.
so she
It
has,
did.
More
Yeah.
auburn, I would say. It's
Mhm.
dark.
yeah, but I
Dark
didn't pick
with
that
the-
up in the indoor scenes.
Mm-mm.
It was not
No,
until
Could
she
be
was
I
the
in the
think it's
lighting.
just the sun, because I
Yeah.
noticed, because her hair color is very similar to William's.
I know, and is that his hair or is that a wig
It's a wig.
for him?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, are they, because they both look kind of red. So I was like, is this the lighting? Or does she actually have that much red in her hair? Anyway, I was just
I don't know if she's wearing a wig because I don't know
I
her.
didn't get
And
the impression she was. It looks pretty.
yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't either, but I don't know. Or it could be permed. I don't know.
it was on my list too. Good choice, Kathy. It I love the honesty with which Jane finally let him in to her, what she had done. Up to that point, she's been kind of coquettish and dancing around, maneuvering him in various ways, and but this was real. It was raw. She was telling him, what she did, and that she wanted to kill him, and he was taken aback by that. He could have easily, called for her arrest right then. He didn't do it. And I feel the same way about Fanny. Her walking over and planting that gentle kiss on the palm of his hand was just priceless. I just thought it was just made my heart melt. It was just lovely.
She's a very commanding presence for
Oh yeah,
someone so young.
yes, she
Yes.
is.
And her
Well
name
cast.
is Lori Mae Wilkinson.
They tend to pick children very well for their
They
parts.
just
But
picked
she kind of
casting
harkened to
very
me. She
well.
harkened back to Joni.
Yeah, I thought of that too. It's
Yeah.
like, here we go with another brilliant kid.
Hmm. Yeah.
I thought she's really
I
well
mean, none
cast.
of the children, all the children in this show have been actually have outperformed some of the adults in their scenes.
It's true.
They're all very good.
I had two that really competed for the top slot of my favorite scene. But I eventually went with Lord John Grey, Claire, and Jamie. I really liked all the scenes they were in together. There was a different dynamic here post everything that's happened. And I really think David is the one who brought something very different to their relationship. Um, and I appreciated it. It was Lord John Grey and Claire now have an intimacy. I mean, they have a new relationship, and there is intimacy there that I felt they just picked right back up with um, when they all were together, and Jamie notices it, and I feel he doesn't love it.
No, he
It's
doesn't.
it's so natural, and you can tell that Claire's kind of aware that, oh boy, I got to walk a fine line here, but she has this relationship with John now that is, and he seems less aware, like just being natural with her, with this new intimacy that they have together as two people. But the one that I liked the most was the eye when she treated his eyeball. I felt every character had their own arc in this episode, even Mrs. Fig. And that's, down to Diana knowing how to do that. And also, they all seemed like they were in character, which was so refreshing. And the one I maybe appreciated the most was Claire, because we got Claire with her sense of humor and also her assertiveness in her medical approach without like the kind of shrewy, pushy takeover. It was just Claire. And it was just so funny watching her say, Jamie, could you hold him? And Jamie's face is like,
Like, do I have to?
do I have to, you want me to touch him?
Especially since Lord John Grey was being so snarky. And so it's like
Well,
he was
and
being
then,
so sarcastic and snarky. It was just like I actually like him in when he's that way. Usually it's
yeah,
directed, elsewhere, but it was just funny. I liked it.
yeah. And then Claire's like, looks at him like, yeah. And then he's like, oh, and goes and holds him. And then she's like, John, something like, I'm sorry, there's no other choice. And then she's like, grabs the eyeball, and Jamie's like, oh, the whole scene was just, I loved it. I loved it.
I will say that the expression on Jamie's face when she manipulated the eyeball was priceless. It just, he was so horrified. I mean, he's seen everything on the battlefield, but realizing what his wife is capable of might be a little bit offsetting at times.
Yes, for sure.
What hit me was when he saw the flag and his reaction to the flag. And it really sort of it really conveyed the level of patriotism that the soldiers had for, Mother England. And I guess that would have been jarring for someone seeing essentially the Union Jack mutilated and turned into an American flag, the first
In
American.
his house.
Yes, in his house, exactly, over his mantle, in his, and that scene, he was just like, basically, if what I see with my good eye, I don't want to see any more with my other one. I just thought that was a brilliant line.
have both mentioned ones that I had on my list, but I'm going to name another one that hasn't been on your list. And that is the scene between Rachel and Ian in the war paint. I thought it was lovely. I thought it was tender. I thought it was intimate. I thought it was apropos for what he was feeling and worried about, and feeling his father's presence there and the fear that he was going to die in battle.
Mm-hmm.
And then for him to paint the dove over his heart and declare that she was his dove. In the book, it's Jamie that paints the dove on his shoulder. I don't know if you remember or not, but but Diana changed it here and made him the author of that image. And I just thought they did it very well. I liked it very much.
The scene when William first went into his general captain. I always forget their ranks, but anyway, when he first came back and the officer said, you know, you look like one of the grooms in my stables at home, and of course not knowing the history of what, but his reaction, and it was just, that was very well done. And I thought it was just it was brilliant writing. It was also to be a 19-year-old soldier who just found out that his father is actually the groom from his estate, and then to be in that situation where he's just so perfect, and he's being told that his uniform is messy and that he looks horrible, but then the other is to be called, said he looks like a groom of all things. I just thought that was, the facial expressions, and he didn't overplay it. He could have easily overplayed that scene, but he didn't.
Yeah. I just continue to have compassion for William, because I felt like that scene leading up to it, he's just had this huge crisis.
Mm.
And it seemed like he was like, okay, well, I can do, I feel good about this. I'm doing something important. I'm a soldier. I know who I am. And then he goes in there, the guy tells him he looks like a groom. And he's like, oh, just, yeah, that kid can't catch a break. And did you
Truth be
notice
told, he's the only eye candy in the show at night, as far as I'm concerned.
William?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's very
yeah, I've
handsome.
never been a big Jamie. You're not a David Barry person either?
Normally I am, but he looked a bit vampirish in this episode.
That's been a theme apparently, but
Yeah.
I thought the officer's eyes were gorgeous at the
Yes. Now that's true. They were.
yeah,
He was a snot, but
he
Yeah.
was a snot.
yeah, he was a snob. By the way, he could have done that in a different way.
Yeah, he seemed like he had ants in his pants too. I don't know. He just, I don't know, it seemed like he was on something almost.
Makes me wonder if we're going to see him again.
Mm-hmm.
In one of the last two episodes that are left, because
Mm.
there was a bit of time spent on him,
Yeah.
and he's an unknown. They didn't even give his rank. She didn't even give his rank. He's just, I assume, the commanding officer of that unit
Right.
where William reported.
Well, my next favorite is William and Jane in the tent. I loved that scene when she came in and the interplay between them. And it's just, they're both older than their age in some ways and younger than their age in some ways. And
Which tent one was
when,
she
when
straddled
she
to?
when she comes in and takes her shoes off and straddles him, and he's like, what the bloody hell are you doing? And she's like, I think that should be obvious, and he's like, well, I don't want this. And she's like, well, he does, I
does.
just thought it was
That was
so
good.
great.
That was
And
good.
then And then the vulnerability of him basically feeling stung by her saying, I wanted to do you a kindness. And he's like, feels like you're giving me charity and I don't want that. And then he's like, well, you're certainly not my whore. And she's stung, like, I don't understand, you know, how would you know what I want? Because she clearly does want to, but he's rebuffing her. So they're kind of both a little bit hurt and confused.
Lost in translation.
Yeah. And I felt like, because William's trying to hold on to his honor or something. And then, of course, he's 19, so he has an erection. And I don't know. I just thought that scene was great. I love those two. I love their chemistry. And there's also, they have a theme. Bear has written them a theme, and I love that. I love that. This is one of those things when you know what the story is and you go, no, maybe it'll be different. Yeah.
I enjoyed that scene, and I laughed out loud when she said that. He does. It was the way she said it, like,
He's great.
man, I know what's going on here.
Yeah.
I like the scene between Lord John and Percival Beauchamp. I thought that was really well done. And when I first saw Percy, I thought, oh, no, 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 no. He doesn't look like what I imagined him to be. But he was wonderful in that scene. It was convincing that he had genuine affection and desire for John. And that's not always easy to do, I think, if you don't have that in real life. I have no idea what his inclinations are, as is said in this episodes. But he was convincing that he really cared about John, that he wanted to do something for him, that he cared about William. And I just thought it was really well done. And I don't see the vampire thing with Lord John.
Well,
I think
and when he gets to the States, his skin coloring's changed. But when he was like the first scene when he was talking to Hal, he was very pale.
Oh, I see what you're talking about. I thought
dark
maybe you were talking
hair.
about his face, but I
Yeah,
think he
but
looks
once he got to the States, he had markings on his face, and he'd been bitten up, and he wasn't as clean. So his coloring was different. So he didn't look as much like a vampire.
Well, they had a filter on that first scene. It was supposed to be
look old,
older. Look
Yeah.
older. Yeah, so they were kind of black and white, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it's the wig too, but that was also on my list, Carmen, because I feel like what was so exceptional about that actor and that scene is that I totally believed that they have had a long-standing relationship.
Yes.
Where that's pretty hard to accomplish when you're a brand new cast member just coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing French and English, and British English, and going in a very short time from giving information to we have this history, and then Lord John throwing his hand away. And yeah, I thought that was a really well done scene too. I was impressed with that casting. And I had the same thought, like, what? That's Percy? But man, he could
I was going to say it later, but I'll say it now since we're on this. If people want to know more about that, the history of that relationship, there you want to read the Brotherhood of the Blade.
Yeah.
Lord John and the Brotherhood of the Blade, because it's in there. Okay. That's one of her novellas or side novels. So not everybody might not know that who's listening. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. My next one was Claire and the Consumption Patient, which this is very unusual for me to pick something like that. But I loved how Claire Claire she was. She, like he's holding up the 3 and coughing, and she's like, 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, and then she's just like, get out of here until they got, it just is so Claire. I really appreciated that. All right, let's go on what worked for you, Catherine.
What worked for me?
Mhm.
What worked for me was the fact that Jane and Fanny looked alike. They looked like siblings, so
Mhm.
that was realistic. Um, I felt that what worked for me was the writing, absolutely, the dialogue. And then what really worked for me was the editing this time. They weren't chopping and jumping around a lot like they have been in prior episodes. It just allowed scenes to roll out like they were supposed to and just kind of run their course. And it didn't feel like they were truncated. It didn't feel like they were jumping into like these weird, you know, time differences and all the rest. So I thought that worked for me.
Sometimes writers, it seems like they just stick people in for no reason.
Filler.
Yeah, or just like that, I don't know, they're just that didn't happen at all, I felt. I felt every person who was in this was there for a reason, and they moved the story forward and somehow, and I really appreciated that. What worked for me is the contrast in the couples. We've said in the past how they're trying to cookie cutter Jamie and Claire. They did that with Roger and Bree, and it really didn't work. And I really appreciate how Rachel and Ian have this very sweet soul connection. Um, and then William and Jane have this, physical connection and a huge attraction, and it's more fiery. Um, and then Jamie and Claire are Jamie and Claire. Um, but yeah, they're a little bit more subdued on the passion this season. Well, there's Claire and Lord John Grey. They do have their own kind of, I don't know, they have a
Intimacy.
feel as a couple. They do. For me, I don't know about you guys, but anyway, that really worked for me. There's more nuance and color, and I like that we are really getting a variety of relationships in these couples.
I like the opening scene a lot. That really worked for me because the discussion between Hal and Lord John set up the next scene perfectly. And in that scene where Hal is writing out, well, I'll prepare your commission for you. And he writes John, William, Bertram, Armstrong, Gray. And then right the next thing, for people who haven't read it, they don't realize that Bertram Armstrong are two of his middle names. And that was the perfect kind of writing because there wasn't any need to explain it to the audience in, sort of well, my name is blah, 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 like a lot of people would do. She did it this way, which was brilliant, I thought. And it was great to see Hal again. I really like him, even though he was a skunk after the battle, a bit of a skunk after the battle of Culloden. Thank you. And I just thought it was very workable. I thought it explained very well their political positions and why they had taken them, and that there's Lord John saying, "I will never ever." Swear any kind of allegiance to the United States of America or to the colonies. And then the next scene, he's standing there. I think it was the Bible. I'm not sure what book he swore on. There he is, taking an oath before God and all everybody else. Now, I just thought it was a brilliant scene. I really liked it.
I agree. And I think it was mainly there as a vehicle
Oh,
to
yeah.
fill in that information, but it was great. It was great to see Sam Hoare friend of BTS. You guys know that he was at the cocktail party in on the tour.
Yes.
So everybody who was on the tour got to meet him and
Oh,
hang out with him.
well,
Yeah.
my broken ankle, I would have been there.
Well,
Yeah. Anyway, we'll never.
yeah. So I agree, Carmen. I thought that was excellent. And I thought David Barry did a great job in the oath, his face of saying, like, I have to say this. This is killing me. I have one eye, I mean, he just
We used that one eye very well, though. I thought
he did.
conveyed a lot in that expression that he portrayed.
Bree. Finally, we got book Bree.
Yeah.
I mean that's all. We got book Bree. And not some amalgam of something else that didn't make sense.
Well, she only had one dimension.
Yeah. Not this time. Well,
Yeah.
because she wasn't playing off her Roger either. And so it wasn't,
That could be part of it.
yeah. It was
Well,
just her.
and she's in this time, so she can be a badass in a
Mhm.
way that she can't in that time.
Yeah. Although I would say a lot of her shooting was probably from both times, but
Well, yeah, for sure.
or just the fact that she even thought, I'll get a gun and I'll shoot them if they're in my house. you
Yeah.
know. So some of it, I think it was, the her mentality plus her combined with her experiences from when she was on the ridge, and that's
Yeah.
kind of lended itself to that scene.
Yes. I think Sophie does a good job as the kind of action
Mm-hmm.
Better.
heroine. Yeah. What do you guys think?
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think we've said before that when she has things that require high emotion, that she's more in touch with her character, I feel, than when it's just ordinary conversation. I think she uh, wanes a bit with her character, but I really liked her punching Callahan in the face. I liked her shooting at them, getting her shotgun ready and going in there with her big girl panties on and doing what she needed to do. And I also liked her fixing Ernie's van while he sat behind me. All of those were things I thought were the book Bree would be consistent with book Bree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was not farcical.
No,
No.
it wasn't. It wasn't pandering either. It could have been pandering. I didn't see that.
Yeah, or just like, oh, come on, that's so unrealistic. It actually all felt, I mean, she walloped the guy with the pot, and then she punched that guy pretty well
Yeah,
too.
she
Like,
punched him, and the look on her face when she saw Rob
mhm.
was, oh man. I mean, if looks could kill, she did a good job with that look too.
Yeah. And then softening when she's with her kids, and then the communication with Fiona and Ernie. Yep, agree. I thought the eye looked really well done to me.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know, you guys will comment on that, but
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
watching it, I was like, why? I think they're gonna say this is well done.
Yep.
Jamie and Claire in the bedroom scene worked for me because we don't often pause and look at what Jamie is carrying. It's other characters who are talking about what they're carrying in the moment, like what they're going through. I don't feel like Jamie doesn't really, he's usually receiving that and giving comfort or advice or stuff. So it was nice for Claire to be the person listening and supporting him. And, it was just a nice, slow scene where they're just sharing some cheese and he's telling like why this is huge for him. So yeah, I liked their dynamic.
I liked the interchange between Claire and the Marquis de Lafayette in the market square. I thought that was charming. He did a great job of convincing me that he was playing the Lafayette, and to see the smile on her face when she realized who she was speaking to was just delightful. She has such a beautiful smile, and we don't get to see her smile that much. And this was a great opportunity to do that. I really liked their little exchange and him calling himself a turn up, with a tongue in cheek about his clumsiness. I thought it was really very well done. And then with her meeting with Percy, his aide de camp, Percy, at the dinner table, and her saying that her family was from Compiègne, and that's what she told Colum, in 102 Castle Leoch. She said, that's where my family's from. Are we related? I thought that was both of those I like very much, but especially with Lafayette.
Least favorite scenes, Catherine?
My least favorite scene was when the lieutenant barged into the house and Mrs. Fig was I just thought that was ridiculous. One, it was ridiculous because the exchange wasn't realistic. Even if the dialogue was, but not who had that dialogue. Even though, that slavery was primarily in the South, there was still a lot of prejudice, and she was still restricted. There was no way that would have been her way of reacting when he went into the house, and then to tell him he had to cook, help her with them. It was just not realistic in any shape or form. That was my least favorite.
I gotta agree with you on that.
His name was Lieutenant Beautyman.
Yeah. Which is not, he was not.
He was not.
God, no.
A very beautiful man. So it was an interesting name for him.
Another least favorite for me, and it's nothing, it was done well, was the political dinner. It's just, that stuff, I get bored during that stuff. But I will say I loved the device of the eel. That helped me get through the political stuff. I thought that was great. And I love the way Kat played that, and, tasting the eel and being like, no, you didn't like it.
I didn't, because
Jamie's look on his face from
she
across
lived
the
in
table.
Paris.
Yeah, him seeing her do it. Yeah.
She lived in Paris for 2 years. She had been exposed to jelly eel before, I'm sure, during her time there. And then there's a lot of eel eating in England and in the UK. So I didn't find that. I thought it was humorous, and I thought it was, but not believable. I guess I should say that.
Well, maybe she just doesn't like it. I mean, she may have been exposed to it before, but maybe she just, I mean, like,
the way she said, I like marjoram, like, of all the things that he listed, that was the only thing that she could say she liked or was familiar with. That I didn't get. I didn't understand the.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm a texture person. I do not like slimy food. So.
Oh, I understand why she didn't like it.
Oh, no, me too. Not interested in tasting it.
But
either.
You guys got the feeling that she'd never been.
Like he was giving her something she never.
I did. I got the feeling that she was getting something she had never experienced before. And that's where my comment came from, is that would be unlikely, having lived in Paris for 2 years, or pretty close to 2 years.
Well, I think she was pretending about that part. Possibly.
That she didn't like it, or that.
No, that she oh, you brought me this, because he's so excited for her to try this delicacy, and maybe she has had it before and she just doesn't like it.
That could
she was acting like, Oh my gosh, thank you so much for this
Well, yeah, she was being
new
gracious.
experience. Oh, I hate these. That's kind of how I read it, you know?
Well, I didn't like seeing the American flag displayed in Lord John's home. I don't know that Jamie and Claire would do that.
Mm,
They've taken over his home, and it still is his home. And I love our flag, so it's not that. It's just that it just seems out of character for them that of course, they didn't know he was coming back either, or when he was coming back. But um, I mean, they've made themselves very comfortable in his residence. I
Yeah,
gotta
I
say,
thought the same thing, and I was thinking when he handed her the flag, I thought her reverence was accurate, and therefore knowing the value of it, especially being from the 1960s, I can't imagine them hanging it anywhere. Like that was like, fabric gold. And I don't think she would have done that, especially since it hadn't wasn't well known as being the American flag.
yeah.
The Betsy Ross reference was cute, but still,
yeah. I
and
thought
she
that
also gave it
the
away.
flag piece part of this, I didn't really understand
Mhm.
what, and then I don't know if you guys saw like the promo picture for it, but it's Claire with the flag behind her. I
Mm.
Oh no, I haven't seen
I
that.
didn't see that.
yeah, I don't understand that. Um yeah, they keep
Well,
trying to make Claire this big patriot and
Mm.
well, they I saw a little clip on YouTube where some of the characters are talking about this, and they're saying that they were trying very, very hard to show respect for the American Revolution and for what that meant to America. And I
uh,
think that's part of the reason why the flag is in there, and their reverence for it is because they really were, the whole cast and crew were trying to convey that to their American viewers. So I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah.
yeah, that's
I
okay.
guess you would interesting. Yeah, I think they probably showed more respect for it than we would have if we had done it. But
Yeah.
but at the
That
same time, also what was I thought was very strange was her bringing up the 6 point, like bringing up a point of information that she would have only have known from a history book that's unlikely to have known that through social context at the time.
I agree with that. That was strange, I thought.
Yeah.
It
And
is
Like
what was
true.
almost
the
like she was
point?
giving herself away.
It is
What was
true.
what was
What?
the point of that? Just putting in the
No,
little
it's true, but how would she have known at that time
I don't
that it
know.
was
Maybe
true
she heard
if she
gossip
was
about
from
it.
that time?
Okay. Um, Betsy Ross had a upholstery shop in Philadelphia. And
Mm,
so Washington and his aides went to her with a sketch of the stars and stripes, and
okay.
the stars, each of the stars had 6 points.
Mm-hmm.
And she said it's harder to work with a 5 point. She didn't use the term embroidery, but she said it's harder to work with a 6 point star than a 5 point star. And it's very easy to cut them out and make
Mm-hmm.
them. And I watched a YouTube on it, and it can be done with one snip of the scissors, believe it or not.
Well,
I
I'm not even
watched it.
saying that the story wasn't true. I knew the story was
Yeah.
true, but I was saying
Okay.
how would Claire have known at that time that it was true?
I,
If
so
in the
maybe
like
market,
they
like
gossiping
it's
in the
something from
market.
history.
yeah, or
Yeah,
maybe
because that's why I got
she
the impression like she mentioned it, and it wasn't something that she would have known other than the fact that she was from the future. That's the impression I got when I saw the scene.
or maybe she went to Betsy Ross's sewing shop
Or
or
upholstery
something.
shop.
I don't know, upholstery shop, yeah. Let's go to what didn't work for us. Catherine?
Okay.
Okay. What didn't work for me? Um George Washington's accent. It's like Are you British? Are you American? It's like you're Virginian gentry, so more than likely he would have had a British accent. So I don't
Yeah.
know why they had him fake an American accent because his fake American accent was horrible. The other thing didn't work for me was John Gray's look at the beginning because he looked like a vampire. Um, and then and I already talked about the one that didn't work was the interaction between Mrs. Fig and Lieutenant Beautyman.
Beautyman,
Buddyman, which is should more appropriate.
a misnomer. I'm trying not to complain about it, but I just got to mention those costumes. You know, William rides into the Haitian camp. It's like full of mud. It's raining. They're sitting on logs and they're completely clean. I mean, ah, um,
Also, in that scene, wouldn't there have been some trepidation of a British soldier into a group of,
Well, they
well,
were
they were part on
hired
the
by
British. Yeah.
weren't they hirees by the British Army or
oh, so
military?
he thought
Yeah.
that he was going to see spies for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the Haitians, I don't know, they were contracted, yes,
Yeah.
by the British Army for,
Yeah, they were
but
like
they just had more
mercenaries, weren't they?
people.
They were like mercenaries.
Yeah, exactly.
So why were there blue uniforms?
They were in green, I think.
Were they green?
They were blue in
Oh,
this.
they were.
Yeah, so they
yeah,
look like, because to me
episode.
they look like continental uniforms as opposed to
They
British
kind
uniforms.
of did.
And so I
Oh.
was like, why is he just so comfortable riding into a camp of
Continental
continental soldiers?
soldiers. Well, it might as well have been
Well, yeah, but
for
Yeah.
William.
yeah, really.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't really, I don't, they had them in green before, didn't they?
It's in the book that they're wearing green.
Yeah, and they actually had them at the Battle of Saratoga in green, I thought there were
Yes,
some.
they did.
So I don't know why that changed. I wondered, would Claire really be at the table with all the officers at their dinner, you know, having such a central role in the, you know, again, that's that presentism where it's just, I'm not sure it's quite,
I
it's
think
like the
she
Mrs.
would have
Fig
been. I think
thing.
if their wives had been there, they would have been there.
Yeah,
And
but
also,
Yeah,
it's her home. It was
it
the
was
home.
her home, but I don't think that she would be, you know, right there in the
No, because she was
military.
hosting. I thought it was just she and Jamie were hosting the dinner. So yes, I think that was
Okay.
appropriate.
All right.
I was a little off put by the dual duty of the dining room table.
I didn't even think of that. That's
It
hilarious.
crossed my mind if they knew what was going on that table a couple of nights before, they might not enjoy the meal quite as much. I wasn't sure. I kept seeing it worked. I mean, I don't want to say it didn't work, but it just, I couldn't help it thinking about that.
Yeah.
I thought Claire's statement, a nation without a flag is like a furnace without a fire, didn't sound like Claire. It made me wonder if Diana hadn't written that for Jamie or someone else at the table and the director decided to put it in Claire's mouth, because that's not the sort of thing Claire says.
You know what I thought?
What?
Honestly, I thought it was something that George Washington said historically, and she was basically telling him what he was going to say later that was going to end up in the history books.
Oh.
That was my impression. I was like, that sounds like something she read from that era that came out of
Could
either his
be.
mouth or someone else's mouth. And so that it was going to be repeated.
Interesting. I didn't
Yeah.
pick up on that. That's really good, Kathy. That might be exactly what was going on there. I did notice that when Betsy Ross unfolded the star and put it on the flag, she picks up her needle and starts stitching it on without her hand under the cloth, other hand under the cloth. And that's not how you don't sew like that. You'll get other fabric in your, you'll pick up fabric you don't want with your needle. So that wasn't that wasn't realistic at all. And then the last one that I have is that maybe I'm being too harsh, but I think Jamie should have been a little more heartsick about his son versus the 300 soldiers. He seemed very matter of fact about it. And after all the anguish that he's shown for, hey, you got your eggnog after all.
with bourbon.
Good girl. That of all the anguish that we've seen him display over William, that there would have been a little bit more emotion in that particular. I mean, I don't think it was horrible, but I just felt like I expected a little bit more heart sickness from him over that, I guess.
See, and that my reaction to that was that he was so enormous that he couldn't react. That he
Yeah.
had to rein himself in so much that it was almost he was unnaturally
I agree, he was
meant because
unnaturally
that's
so, and
all
that
he
would
could do.
that would be a logical reason for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I didn't consciously think of that, but that makes a ton of sense that he would actually have to skip over it almost, knowing what he was having to do in the next day or two.
Yeah, because the lack of John's reaction also. So if someone had said that and it was truly as callous or as unemotional and as objective, his other father would have reacted to that, I would imagine. Like, how dare you? How could you say that? Whatever.
Right.
Instead he was just like, well, then just have one less of those souls and I'll go get them, basically.
Right.
So I think it was obvious. At least, I mean, because Claire didn't react. Nobody reacted. Like, how could
they
It
didn't.
just seemed like that was an odd thing to say, and then to have no one react.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to things I noticed, Catherine.
And we'll probably talk about this also in the medical stuff, but I did notice how they made it so that John's eye didn't move, like she described. Like, he was looking and one eye stayed, so it was obviously a contact, but it was just so well done because
it really was.
His other eye was doing all sorts of acrobatics, and the one eye was just staying the same.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was one thing I noticed. I noticed exactly how handsome William is. Yeah. Steven might have some competition. Let's see.
Wait, who? Oh,
Stephen
Cree. You liked Fergus too. You're getting younger and younger.
I did like Fergus. I did, but yeah, but William is he's more like an Adonis type handsome rather than pretty.
He's pretty beautiful.
Fergus is pretty handsome. He's not pretty handsome.
That's true.
Let me see. I noticed how Ian is more manly. He's more convincing as a man.
Yes.
And as a heterosexual man who is actually attracted to his wife, and who there's like his posturing has changed.
Yes. He also has been working out. I don't know if you noticed his trapezius muscle.
Well, I mean, he's actually also just grown up. Like,
yes, that's true.
He was a teenager, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, he was.
Well,
he
looked
was like
it.
a tiny little kid, and now, like, when he took his shirt off, I was like, "Whoa, he's got like man shoulders and arms and chest and everything." That's
Although he's not as cute, but he's still.
No, he's not. He's not.
But he's more manly. Yeah. So those are things I noticed.
Okay. I noticed the contrast of Claire standing in the foyer with Jamie versus with Lord John Grey when she was greeting guests with Lord John Grey, and she looked like somebody had died because they had. And then this time she was euphoric. She just had this big dinner and she's with Jamie, and all that. So I noticed that. Um, I did wonder why Claire is so, she seems almost nonplussed by George Washington by comparison to this Gilbert character, which
Oh, the Lafayette.
yeah.
Lafayette.
Well, because he's charming and he was flirting with her.
Yeah, I
But I
mean,
mean, George Washington historically, she was talking about
She had
he's
met him
gonna be,
before.
she met him before.
yeah, I
She had
guess
met him at the theater
at the theater. So I
in
guess
Wilmington.
that first excitement
Mhm.
has passed, and now she's
Yeah.
meeting someone else. That makes sense. I noticed that Rachel has a Fraser nose.
Mm.
Have you guys noticed that? She has a very straight nose, and it's just a little bit extended. It's a beautiful nose, but it
She's a
reminds me of a,
beautiful woman.
she
I'll have
is.
to take a look at that. I'm
Yeah.
so enthralled by
I
her
like the way she's
eyebrows.
playing her character. I forgot to mention that
It's
earlier.
the profile. You'll see her
I'll look
Fraser
for it.
nose. Um, let's see.
Maybe Jamie fathered her too.
Jamie got around. Kat sounded like she had a cold in this episode. I noticed.
I noticed that when Lord John swears the oath on the Bible, his fingernails are immaculate. And all of the, we've said this before, but all of the uniforms, they're out there drilling, and this one guy comes, he doesn't even have a rifle, a musket. He's given one by, by the aide, Bixby, but that's just not, if that's something that
Mm.
Terry would never have allowed to happen. I don't
Never.
think. So, he's been on the run for several days and his fingernails would not be tidy.
Mhm.
Nobody's.
How long has he been on the run? Like, I thought it
Well,
was
it's hard to
more than
say.
days.
Yeah,
In the
it's
book.
days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he was asleep under a tree.
Yeah, he
Oh
was
yeah,
kind
I
of,
mean
a tree.
he's
There's no way his nails would be clean.
no.
Yeah.
Okay.
I noticed that Bree only loaded 2 shells in that side-by-side shotgun. She should have loaded her pockets with extra shells. If she's going into a fight, she should be fully armed. And that would be something that I noticed. Even though the scene in the courtyard was almost right out of the book, it was really well done. And there was a lot of that scene goes on quite a long time in the book, but they managed to compress it into about a minute and a half or two. And I thought it was well done. So
How many shots did she end up taking?
2.
Oh, okay, that's
She
good.
shot twice, but
Yeah.
she could have shot, she didn't know going in what
Right.
she was going to need. So I would have filled my pockets with, she had extra shells
Yeah.
in the trunk of her car.
I would have filled mine too.
So, and then the last one I'll say is the Roquefort cheese may appear in the future. So you want to remember about the Roquefort cheese, everybody who's watching.
Okay. I
Might
don't
have
even
a
remember
starring
what that
role.
is.
Okay. Do you, Kathy?
Oh, the cheese?
Yeah, you remember. Don't say, but do you remember why the cheese is important? Okay,
Mm-mm.
well, probably next episode we're going to see.
Okay. I thought Jamie looked very handsome in his camel colored 2-piece suit at the end where he's watching John Gray leave. He looked especially handsome. Let's see. William is on that same horse who is Sleepy or Alfie. That horse is like should get like I should really mention it as a standout more often.
Yeah.
I noticed Mrs. Figg's joy at being complimented by George Washington.
Yes, she was very modest about it, but she was so pleased.
Yep. I noticed, and I really liked William's. Did you guys notice his glove holder on his
On his horse.
saddle?
A saddle. Yeah.
He tucked
That
his
was nice.
gloves in, very poshy and very functional. I noticed that Lord John Grey called Claire my dear in this episode.
Jamie hates that.
Yep.
It's not
Let's
going to
see.
go over too well if he keeps doing that.
I wondered about all the time spent on Gilbert and
Mhm.
Claire. Is he coming around later? Because I actually felt the market scene was kind of like the last market scene, a little bit long. If that's just a character that came to dinner and that's it, you know?
Well, I mean, he's the reason why we won the war.
Okay.
So
So maybe
maybe
they were
they're
just doing a little ode to him.
I wonder if that's
Okay.
possible, but he
All
might
right.
be appear again. I mean, he's the reason why the siege of Yorktown was a success.
Mhm.
So that was, I think, the final battle, if I remember right. I may be wrong,
Yes. Yes. If Hamilton's serious.
but I haven't seen it.
Learn our history from Hamilton. There was one thing I didn't mention,
Mhm.
how Sam gets lost in the character. You just don't see him
Yeah.
at
That's
all.
true.
You forget that he's kind of this good, goofy guy in
Yeah.
real life, and,
Yeah.
and you know, a little on the shy side. And then you see, I mean, Jamie is just like, and he comes off as several years older than
Mhm.
Sam, and much beefier and just more manly, just so much more. And you just don't see Sam at all. He just always gets lost.
Yeah. He does disappear.
That's because he's a good actor.
He is,
Mhm.
and his facial, again, the facial stuff. You know, he can say a whole sentence without moving his mouth.
Yeah. I noticed Rob Cameron yelled Callahan, and I can't remember who that is.
He was an archaeologist who worked on the chapel, the old chapel at
Oh.
Lallybrock.
Mhm.
And are you
So we're
gonna
gonna see him later, yeah.
Yeah, he looked awful similar to somebody
What?
in the episode.
Oh, I didn't notice that. Is
You
that, are you
didn't?
gonna bring that up?
Well,
That's
it's on my
something you
list.
noticed? Okay, perfect. Let's see. And I just wanted to say, you mentioned last time that, you know, you missed a lot of the characters that were supposed to be in at this point, and one that you didn't mention was Dottie, who I really like that character. And I really missed the have it because I realized, you know, it's we're past it. I loved all the scenes with Hal and Claire. That whole thing at Lord John's place in the book. So I'm sorry we're not going to get that, but yeah.
I want to know why William would trust Richardson to go on another mission for him after he sent him into the Great Dismal to be, to be taken prisoner by the rebels, and now he's going on another mission for Richardson. And
But doesn't that happen in
But
the
did he
book?
know that's why he was being sent, or did he think that he just messed up?
Yeah, that's
I think he just thought he screwed up.
well, I think he's taking the blame for it. Is that what you mean?
Well, because he didn't make it to he didn't complete his mission. So in his he probably doesn't even realize that it was a trap.
oh.
I,
Does he find out that it's a trap? Did
yeah, he
Ian tell
does
him?
in the book, but I don't
Yeah, but
remember
it
whether
didn't.
he, I don't remember whether he found out in the episodes or not.
But
Based
so
on the episode, it sounds like he won't find out until Lord John Grey catches up to him.
And tells him.
Mhm.
well, what happens in the book though, Carmen? Like who gets him to go on this?
This is not in the book
Oh,
that I remember. I don't remember him going to the Hessians with a message.
I don't either, but
The Hessians attack him and they leave him for dead in that gully,
yes.
if you remember right. But I
But
don't
why did they attack him? To get his horse, or was it
I think they
intentional?
were going to rob him. they
But it
were,
wasn't connected to any espionage.
no, not that I remember. It's been a while since I read it,
Yeah,
but I believe uh, he was writing, and they were sort of deserters. They weren't
that's right.
Noah von Schnell and
Right.
a commanding whatever his office is. I don't remember. Um, so I have
That's a good point. Like, why would he trust him again?
well, that's what I have to wonder about that, but maybe we're going to get an explanation in the future. Sometimes these
Yeah.
things happen and we kind of are left hanging, and then it gets tied up in a subsequent episode. So I'm willing to
Well,
forego
based
it.
on the show, he felt like he didn't complete his mission and he let him down. So he was like, I'm sure this long, he said the war's going to be long. You'll have a chance to redeem yourself. And so that's what so
Oh,
he did not know what was supposed to happen to him
okay. In the show.
in the show.
Okay. I forgot
So
that.
he sees this as his opportunity to prove himself because he failed the last time.
Poor William.
I
Yeah.
know.
But he's the Jamie side of him is starting to express itself, and I like it.
Yes.
Yes.
Is the gallant, honorable man that I find so enjoyable about Jamie. So another one that I had is that Callahan, when she tore his balaclava off, he looks like Richardson.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Well, you look again,
Okay.
because there's some speculation about that, a lot of speculation due to the next book.
Okay.
Then, and I heard Jane and William's musical refrain when he kissed her. It was
Mhm.
just reminded me a bit of the lyrical nature of the one between Jamie and Claire, but
Yeah.
it was very sweet.
Mhm.
And then the last thing I'll mention is that they stand up at one point at the dinner table and make a toast, and they have a wine glass with a fairly long stem on it. And then the next thing they drink
Is
out of a
aperitif.
shot glass, and
Mhm.
all of a sudden they've got a different glass and they smack it on the table like a shot glass. It's a short glass, but
Really? They
It's
yeah,
like
they
those port aperitif.
yeah.
they started out with the wine glass. Wait, I thought they handed out two two different drinks, and the
Well,
second one was a shot.
I only remember one, but I could be wrong. So I'll look again.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
mean, the dinner wasn't, it wasn't my favorite part either,
Mm,
Courtney. So
yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to watch that again. Um, joking. I just wanted to make a comment because you talked about William. I think one of the things I appreciate so much about how Charles is playing William that didn't come out for me as much in the books is how he, at this moment, when he's trying to figure out who he is with this identity crisis, he's vacillating between his fathers. Like his training, the both of his training is as Lord John Grey's son. And the what is he? Not Duke. What is he of Ellesmere?
Lord,
Lord
Lord,
Ellesmere. But then his, biology is Jamie. And you see him kind of go back and forth between these two parts of himself. I feel like William or Charles is playing that so seamlessly that
mhm.
it doesn't, it's not jarring or anything. It's believable. And yeah, I noticed that. And I want to say one more that I forgot to say, which is I noticed that when Claire is spots Lord John Grey in the medical tent, she turns and she says, General, to Jamie.
Yeah.
I believe that is because Diana wrote this episode. Because in all the others, she'd be like, Jamie, like, I don't know. There was a a higher level of respect for Jamie from Claire that I
Yes.
saw in this episode
Yes.
that I really appreciated. And that's what I was bringing out about the bedroom scene, even though they were in the bedroom, Lord John Gray's bedroom, where some things may have taken place. And Jamie wasn't that comfortable being before, but he did anyway. I guess he, maybe blanked that out with the dining room table. Yeah, so I noticed that. Okay, we're gonna do medical and anatomical. Go for it, Kathy.
All right. There was quite a bit in here because they had Claire doing her medical bit in the medical tent. So there was the various things there. So what I did find very interesting was when she said he's been coughing for 3 months. This is consumption, send him off. When post-viral coughs can last months and months and months, but maybe it was the type of cough and the way he was having uncontrolled cough. My first thought would have been pneumonia, but that's me. Um, but I guess at the time, given the camp, the most common thing, common things being common for a chronic cough would have been consumption. So that made sense. The other part was the physiological response that William had, regardless of what his brain was telling him. The rest, they're at a 19-year-old young man, there's no way he would have been able to control not having an erection. So that was very realistic. I think, to be honest, I don't think most men in general would have been able to not respond, regardless of what they wanted or not wanted to happen. Of course, then the third was the gout, which Hal did connect to his eating, which does worsen gout, uric acid, definitely certain seafoods and a lot of it's protein-based foods will often make it worse. Of course, not drinking a lot of wine or beer or port and without drinking a lot of water can do it as well. And I don't think a lot of people drink water during that time. So yeah, his eating habits would definitely lend itself to having gout.
What is gout?
Gout is when uric acid crystals, so our body breakdown of certain food produces certain byproducts. And for gout, it's uric acid, which is a crystal form. So it's kind of like shards of glass almost. And so what happens is they'll get lodged into joints and it causes really bad inflammation and pain. I mean, that is one of the few times in medicine where I don't even there's just few times in medicine where it's like when someone says they have something, you just give them pain medicine no matter what. Gout is one of those things. It's like kidney stones, gout. There is just one of the most painful conditions in medicine. And it's obvious. It's like joints get large and swollen and hot to the touch. And it's not an infection because usually their blood, their CBC, their white count doesn't go up. So it's often, so it's not. I mean, it's so obvious in a clinical setting.
Is there a cure now?
Feet are the most common place where it happens. Pardon?
Is there a cure now?
No, there's no cure, but there are medications to help prevent the buildup of uric acid, preventative by watching what you eat. And then there are medications you can take as soon as you start having symptoms that stops it from worsening. And so there's different types of medications. Unfortunately, here in this country, insurance doesn't pay for all of them. They'll pay for the preventative, but they don't always pay for the acute medications.
Can I show something real quick?
Go ahead.
Let's see. I'll see if this works. See this cartoon of the little devil biting the toe?
Yes.
That's gout. That's from the 1700s, I think it is. Yeah, the 1700s. It's a famous picture, but that's how people thought about gout in those earlier years, that a demon or a devil was biting That's the
biting
most
their
common
foot.
place is the first,
Mm,
the
big
knuckle
toe.
of the big toe. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, not fun. Um, and and then the last was just the eye movement, which was the only so it was very much, yes, the orbit being crushed around the eye would definitely impinge the muscles, which would make it difficult for the guy to move. I think they did a brilliant job in filming that and showing that because they had his other eye looking everywhere, and
Yes.
that one eye just kept looking, staring straight ahead, which was, I mean, so well done.
Yeah.
Um, the only part that I was questioning, I was like, how did she grab his eye? I'm like, where did your finger go? There's not enough space between the orbit and the eyeball on both sides to move. I was just like, how did she do that? Usually you have like something like scissors with little round things at the end that come together like this that you slip in and hold the eyeball. So I don't know how she managed to do that and release the muscle,
Inferior rectus.
and also, well, the honey in the eye was actually, that was historically accurate.
Yeah.
Honey is known to be antimicrobial, and it's also very slippery, and so that would have been accurate. However, how she managed to release that muscle then have so easily, I don't know. That's where my belief was suspended. But Carmen, I'm sure you can go into a lot more detail than I did.
Um, so I will add a couple of things about gout. It was
Mhm.
first described by the Egyptians almost 3,000 years BC. So it's been around a long time. This is not a modern
Wow.
day or even a few centuries ago. We're talking millennia ago that gout has been around. And
Wow.
it's associated, it's called the king's disease, it's been called that. Hippocrates called it the unwalkable disease. And that's why Hal, you asked, to comment on why Hal couldn't go to America. He couldn't get up and walk because the pain is so intense for these people. Now, they didn't have aspirin and other kinds of NSAIDs, but anti-inflammatories that we have now. The teas could help a little bit, but it's people suffer terribly from it, and it tended to be at least in the past, a disease of wealthy people because they could afford the organ meats, which are very high in producing uric acid, the uric acid, which crystallizes out, um, as Kathy said, and organ meats, red wines, ports, very, sumptuous meals that poor people couldn't afford, and they didn't get gout because they couldn't afford the kind of foods that bring in there's a group of compounds in those kinds of foods that are called purines, and those are the ones that are metabolized into uric acid, and that's what deposits as crystals in the joints. It's a type of arthritis.
Yeah.
um
One of the things that they did do also very well, if you watch the scene where Hal stands up and he has both his hands on the desk and he sort
yes.
of wobbles a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
because it would have been very hard for him to put pressure on the foot that had
Yeah.
gout.
Yeah.
In fact, many people can't even put a shoe on
Right.
when they
That's
have.
right. That's correct. um I think I agree with Kathy. I think Claire immediately going 3 months, you've got TB. Now we wouldn't do that, but in a prison settings, in harsh conditions where people are living in tents together and things like that, it's prisons, that sort of thing. This is the type of place where you would expect to find TB, and it would be logical, I think, for her to. That would be how she would triage this, and she would want to send him away from other people. She wouldn't want him to be housed with the healthy troops anymore. And so I thought
Are
thought that
are
made
TB
sense.
and consumption the same thing?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Oh, I
Mhm.
Yeah,
didn't
it's
know
an
that.
old, yeah, tuberculosis.
Consumption's an old name for
Right,
tuberculosis.
because it
Oh,
consumes the body, it
yeah.
wastes. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's
Yeah.
what Ian
Can
had.
I tell you a funny story real quick?
Sure.
My sister had a cough. This was in the 70s. And no, this was actually in Kenya in the late 70s. And she was a bit portly. Um, and so she went to the doctor because she had a post-viral cough and she had coughed and coughed, for months. And went to the doctor and said, I think this could be TB. And he said, the other name for TB is consumption. He goes, young lady, I don't think anything's consuming you at the moment.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
that was naughty of you.
It was. But she was like, okay, she just
She
laughed
was,
and she's
but I
like, oh,
bet she was relieved though.
She
yeah.
probably she has a good sense
Because
of
TB
humor.
it was prevalent in Kenya
Yeah,
at the time. So,
yeah.
Wow.
it wasn't completely outside of the realm of possibility, but oh, anyway. Go ahead. Sorry, Carmen. Go ahead.
Um, John's eye, I agree. The FX on it were just fabulous when that eye was fixed. And that's why people who have a blowout fracture of the bony orbit, they get diplopia, which means they get double vision because that eye is seeing straight ahead. And the other eye is turning around and focusing on the normal eye, is focusing on different things in the environment. And so they can't fuse those two images together. And and that was extremely well done. I thought the whole thing, from him getting beaten up by Jamie to this finish, was well done in the prosthetics that they used. And it obviously was some kind of a contact lens that they were using to insert in there. Honey, right? It is anti-inflammatory, and it's also got antibiotic properties, especially something like manuka honey. She didn't say that's what she had, but and John's eye is described in chapter 61 of Moby, and it's called a viscous three-way, in case you have forgotten about that. But it was really a play on not only the viscosity of the honey, but the three-way action that's going on between
Oh,
these three characters, and that it's viscous, it's messy,
very thick.
sticky.
Thick with something. Thick and sticky.
And I very much agree with Kathy. I think it's doubtful, first of all, that she could grip his eyeball with her fingers. In the book, she uses her smallest cautery iron and puts it down under the eyeball and lifts up on it. But it takes her, she doesn't get it until the fifth try.
Oh
She's
gosh.
not able to get it out of there. And there's a crack in the floor. I told you before, there's a crack in the floor of the orbit in a blowout. And that's what catches the inferior rectus muscle that she mentioned. And Diana's correct about which muscle it would be. There are other kinds of fractures of the orbit too, but that one is the one that he's supposed to have. I'm surprised that she didn't have a piece of gauze that she gripped it with. That would help a little bit. But you think about trying to grab a hold of an eyeball with your bare fingers.
It
He's
was slippery.
slippery.
I mean,
Yeah,
eyeballs are slippery anyway.
Yeah.
yeah,
Slippery little.
yeah. And then um, anatomically, the conjunctiva forms a blind sac all around the eye. You cannot get in behind that where the muscles are to take a hold of them or do anything unless that conjunctiva is cut. Otherwise, you're going to hit that conjunctiva, and all the muscles and everything else is behind that membrane. So
How does she get through that in the book? Or does she?
there's a tear in it, is
Oh,
what
okay.
it says. And so she's able to get her tool down under it and lift it up. I suppose that it was just done for brevity, this way for brevity,
Yeah.
and not to satisfy us medical dorks.
Physicians and
Yeah, and all of those people. But I don't think she could really get a hold of an eyeball with her fingers very well, and you know pull on it. She said she was going to turn it, but I would think a better method of doing it would be to try to get under it and lift the eyeball up, because you're trying to get that muscle out of the crack in the bone. And would it slide back in? It could. So
Mhm.
even if you pull
That's what the honey was
out,
for, I think.
pardon?
The
Yeah, to
honey.
help that. Yeah, to help lubricate it to prevent that from. Yeah, she's right about that. But it could still slip back into that crack. It doesn't, but anyway. Um, Claire used a very simple but accurate test at the end, where she was having him look the 4 directions and follow with the eye to make sure that it was functional. And
Doctors don't do anymore, which is so terrible, but it's such an effective,
it
uh,
really is.
it tells you a lot about a lot.
It
And
does.
I can't tell you the last time I've gone to a doctor that anyone's even asked me to do that.
And it's
Um,
such a, like you say,
I
it's
do it
such a
with every
simple.
exam. I mean, I don't do exams like that anymore, but every single patient,
You
because
did it.
well, mainly because you catch nystagmus. You can't catch it otherwise,
Yeah.
which is basically when someone looks and their eye just kind of jumps, or if they
Hmm.
look up, or it turns,
Hmm.
like you'll have them move their eye, and also, and which is a sign of HIV.
Yeah.
But if you don't check their eyes, I mean, there's in fact I caught a um I'm blanking on the name, but basically she had a blood clot in her circle of Willis, and the only
Oh,
reason I caught it was because one of her
geez.
eyes didn't move, and it wasn't swollen. She was misdiagnosed as having um, conjunctivitis, and so when looking at her eyes, I did the exam, and only one of her eyes moved. I was like, "Oh, this is not conjunctivitis," and so I sent her for
That
an
can,
MRI. We found
yeah,
the
that can kill her.
radiologist was so impressed. He called and he was like, "That was so cool. I haven't seen one of those since med school." I'm like, "Okay," but yeah,
Yeah, it's too bad those
it catches a
techniques are
lot.
being lost.
Yeah, it is a very effective um, physical exam tool.
That's really all that I wanted to say. There are some risk factors for a gout that I might mention.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there, at least in a few instances, apparently there's a genetic component in some people, but it's not very common, and it's just been recently found. Um, it's more common in men.
Yeah.
It's more common in if you're obese or you're carrying extra weight, and if you're consuming certain kinds of foods. So, as was mentioned before, it's really important to alter the diet, um,
Mm-hmm.
and to try to pay attention to that to avoid those bouts because they do come and go.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, I mean, I don't think it's continuous. Is that right? Am I
No,
understanding
no.
correctly? Yeah.
And if you now there is medication where if like as soon as you have the first just inkling of it happening, you can prevent it and shorten the course from it could sometimes last up to 2 weeks, and now you can get it shortened to like a few days
Oh,
by
wow.
catching. It's sort of the same, a lot of medication, but then you can take daily if you have more than I think it's 4 bouts in a year, then it's warranted to take like it's allopurinol daily to prevent it, and that's it's more preventative. But often, if someone has a bout on top of having taken something preventative, it's it's a terrible.
Oh,
I mean, it's worse than if you just don't do anything.
oh,
Yeah,
wow.
but were you done, Carmen?
I
There's more.
am. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
done.
No, I was gonna say talking about anatomical. Um, it was very interesting because you had William, who looked like he hadn't missed a meal, which he was very he's my new crush. Um, and then
Really? I
oh,
didn't catch
he
that.
took off his shirt, you didn't notice?
I
I did.
noticed.
I was
Yeah,
kidding. I was
very
being
much anatomical.
He,
And
facetious.
he
then,
has.
which is I found also, but it's interesting. I did not have that same reaction to Ian, who I just seemed a little doughy to me. I don't know, but he just shaped it very differently.
Yeah.
But it's just
I
amazing.
didn't think
Well,
Ian
I think
looked doughy. I just,
I don't
Well,
think
he
he looked
didn't have
doughy.
he's bigger and he's buffer than he used to be, but he's not as defined.
oh yeah.
Well, he has more subcutaneous fat, I think,
Yeah,
deposits, and Charles has almost none,
yeah,
Yeah.
especially on his chest and abdomen. I mean, he's pretty
he's
much
very fat.
muscle. I mean, it's fascia and then skin on top of muscle. It's not much else.
Yeah.
He's a rock climber and
I can see that.
does a
Mm.
lot of working out and I think like he works out and he also does things like rock climbing and a lot of hiking and a lot of like that type of that's what he likes to do in his free time. And supposedly he eats a lot too. But I
Well, you
mean,
have to in
and
order
I
to maintain
guess
that level of muscle.
yeah. And I guess it's funny because I have a 21-year-old son. I relate more with him like a mother. Like I'm like, oh, poor poor William and Catherine has two girls, and she's like, he's hot. But I'm like,
I
oh,
mean,
wait a minute. I
I
think
wouldn't, of course, in person, I'm
well,
sure
yeah, no, of
my
course.
mama bear would come out. If I'm looking,
Yeah,
I
no, it's totally, it's funny.
I still have hormones.
Well, yes.
You're still a young woman.
So, should we go on and try to do some, last time I said, well, Antoinette's not here, so
Mhm.
lawyerly, we should
Other
skip.
than just mentioning what the legal, even if we don't know what it means, we
Yeah.
know where it's indicated. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
when Hal was talking about the commissions,
Mhm.
clearly there's some legal component to that, and being, is it only the gentry who can do that? Is it lords, or do you have to be both have a title and a commission in order then to create a commission
Well,
for somebody
don't they
else?
buy them? I thought they
Yeah, they buy
buy
them, but I think you have to be also from a certain lineage before you to even be able to buy one. It's like
Or
not just,
maybe to grant one, I think
yeah,
why
maybe.
they can grant commissions.
Okay.
I mean, they're officers in the in the
British Army.
service.
Hmm.
So it could be that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, all I knew is that there's something significant about the fact that each of them could create a commission for
mhm,
their sons,
right,
and that or anyone's sons, because Hal could have done it for William,
right.
and Lord John Grey didn't want him to.
Was there's something about Lord John surrendering, saying, I surrender to you personally, General Fraser.
Yeah,
Because
There's
he won't be
something,
hanged.
do you guys remember, Carmen, you
yeah,
remember what
I
that's?
I do.
Okay.
That when he surrendered to him personally, it makes Jamie responsible for his safety and care. And who,
Okay.
when by putting himself in Jamie's hands, Jamie is now responsible for whatever happens to Lord John, and he prefers that to anybody else being in anybody else's hands. So
Well, that makes sense, we think. I did think it was interesting when he said, she said, I'm sorry, John. And he was like, is your husband sorry? She's like, no,
No.
probably not.
I don't think so. Still, he's gonna bank on Jamie being in Jamie's custody. And I wondered about the Lieutenant Beautyman commandeering Lord John Grey's house. I know that stuff happened
Mhm.
in active conflicts.
Still does. It always has
Well, it
happened.
still happens, even like eminent domain still
Yeah.
happens. So
The murder of Harkness. Oh, this is another thing that occurred to me. I was like, well, this took care of Carmen's casting issue with Harkness,
He's
and you were
gone.
like, yeah, exactly. He
Gone,
didn't have
baby,
to
gone.
do his next part that you weren't going to find believable because he just died and we heard about it. We didn't see him anymore. So that took care of that. But I
That's
wonder,
right.
obviously Jane can be convicted for his murder.
Yes. They don't
Uh,
care they wouldn't care whether he was trying to take her little sister.
It sucks.
They wouldn't care,
I know.
which is very sad.
Yeah. Okay, BTS.
it's interesting just only because of what you just mentioned, that William William and Jamie probably have more in common in real life as Charles and Sam than they do in the show. And I don't know if it's intentional, his mannerisms are intentional or what it is, but it's like you see it. You
Yeah.
can see the connection.
Yeah, he does have, I wonder that too, because he does every once in a while, you'll just catch him doing an exact Jamie move or
Mhm.
expression.
I rather think that he has studied that
That's what I think too.
Yeah,
and that he is doing that for our benefit.
intentionally.
Yeah.
It's working on Catherine. I'm kidding.
Well, I have to say, at 82, I find him a very attractive man.
Yes. No, he is very attractive.
He can make me blush.
Yes. Okay, go ahead, Carmen, with your BTS, with your
Um,
bad self.
So the letter that was delivered to von Schnell, he unfolds this mask and puts it over the letter. And inside of that torn out area, that is the true message that he's supposed to find. That actually was done. It's called a mask letter, MASK letter, and it was employed in the Revolutionary War for spying purposes. I read about it and it was very fascinating. You can look it up online.
Interesting. I thought they called it a cipher. Is that just another name?
Which is a little different. They called it a cipher, but that's actually not a cipher. What a cipher is actually is a decoder
Yeah,
that actually takes
Oh.
words and numbers and changes their meaning.
right.
And that's
Well, they
different.
didn't do the research that Carmen did.
No.
Diana, what is going on here?
No, she did it. She did it because she's put it in there, and
I know,
she
but they
wouldn't have
called it a
noted.
cipher instead of a mask.
Well,
I'm sure it wasn't she.
that would be my guess.
I know, because
more
she's a researcher, man. She
Yeah,
would
she
not do
is.
that. Yeah. They probably
She
changed it and it
certainly
probably
was.
drove her crazy.
George Washington never fathered any children of his own.
Hmm.
And he raised Martha's two children from a prior marriage and two of her grandchildren and assorted nieces and nephews. But that might be why he was so fond of Gerbet. Is that the way he pronounces Gilbert?
Gilbert, something like that.
Something like that. I don't really know. So I thought that was really interesting that he had so much affection for him. And it could be because he didn't have a son of his own.
Apparently, he
Carmen,
surrounded himself with young soldiers that he did that to, because apparently he had that same sort of relationship with Alexander Hamilton as well.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not from the play. It's from it's actually I actually read Hamilton's autobiography. I mean, not his autobiography, but a biography on Hamilton.
I find Washington's voice bothersome. It wasn't at all what I was expecting. So I did some reading on that to see what his voice was like. And people have said historically that his voice was deep, that it was low, and it was somewhat tremulous when he spoke. And he was an introvert who was committed to the importance of thoughtful decision making. And so that helped me to understand why they cast this man as Washington. I'm sorry, I didn't write down his name. But I thought that was quite interesting that he did not, when Lee snaps that smarty remark about, well, if he was paying attention, we would have done better.
Yeah, he had a lot of his insubordination was a problem for him.
Yeah. And Washington.
Oh, it was a problem for Washington?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
He wanted his job. Lee thought.
Oh, right. No, I thought Catherine was saying in general.
No, but historically, yes.
Historically.
There was always rumblings. There was always people thinking that they could do better or
Yeah.
they were trying to undermine him.
Maybe the
Yeah,
tremulous voice.
yeah, and I had, for some reason, I've always had this kind of notion that he would have been very loud, maybe not loud, but a very authoritative voice, with
Yeah.
rather loud, or at least able to project and so forth. And he wasn't
Commanding.
it wasn't like that.
Okay. Interesting.
So I think maybe they cast him better than what I had thought.
So I did a little different BTS this time. I kind of, peppered in who Fanny was and stuff. We have so many engaged viewers who bring up such great things in the comments that I wanted to highlight some of those. Several people pointed out that they really didn't do a good enough job making it clear that the reason that Jamie went alpha male is that Laura John Gray said we were both fucking you. And there was a PTSD basic moment that was just like blackjack,
Ran.
and then it was a trauma response and he went into fight. And even when we discussed this, we didn't really, I mean, Antoinette addressed that, but I saw an interview with Kat and Sam, it was one of those cutesy things, and she was like, Jamie goes all alpha male because Claire has sex with Lord John Grey. But it's really not about that. It's really the moment that makes that happen is when he says we were both fucking you, and Jamie it's like a PTSD thing. It's a trauma thing.
I mean, up to that point, he was being very reasonable, if you remember. So,
Yeah.
he said, why? I
Right.
mean, he didn't even seem all that upset.
I think
Well, he might have been buying time,
yeah.
and he is often a very rational man. So he may have wanted to, well, what's the explanation for it if this is true? And he said, I didn't believe you.
Right, right, exactly. Because he thought, well, you're gay, you don't even wouldn't do this. So what are you even talking about?
Yeah.
But it was the reason he got physical was he was having a trauma response. And there were several people who said it really irritated me that they didn't point that out. And so that all these people are just thinking Jamie's a brute, this is, alpha male, all that stuff. So I wanted to call that out.
Well, I think they probably figured that they would make that connection. I mean, it's
I don't think most people would have. I think that
really,
especially if there anyone who maybe is caught it from the middle of the series,
well, that's true.
they wouldn't know.
Well, and the other thing is they haven't had Jamie having the nightmares. Like, Claire's PTSD, we got an entire episode. Bree's PTSD, entire episode. Roger, we got like a whole season about his PTSD. And Jamie's, in the scene in 201, right after this all happened, he's still physically probably feels all the things that he's feeling. And that's when Claire has him chase her down the quay or whatever while she's going to check on someone's meat, what do they have?
Smallpox.
Smallpox, thank you. They haven't really given Jamie that sort of
good point.
attention in that way. And I actually find that happens to men too, that happens to men in our society. And then people are like, why aren't you in touch with your emotions? But get on with it, just like stuff it down and get on with it.
It's a double standard.
Yeah, totally. The next one I wanted to mention is that I brought up the Adam and Eve connection with the apple and the tree, and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And Linda commented, she said the reason that Adam and Eve were cast out of paradise was because of the knowledge of good and evil. So it was the knowledge
She's correct.
in this episode that created everyone's, disturbance. And, it's really true. Nobody lost a leg. It was just finding out you're not who you thought you were. You're who your true paternity. It was the knowledge. And I just think that's, a great tie-in with Adam and Eve, and also just to contemplate that and how that happens in life, just the knowledge of something, even though nothing material changes. Just having the knowledge of something can create a lot of upset.
Charles Lee was a real person. I think we're
Generally,
he did lose 2 fingers in a duel in Italy. I wasn't sure whether they were talking about Washington or him because of the antecedent wasn't clear when she said, "Oh, I wondered where he lost those 2 fingers," or something like that.
yeah.
He lived a very colorful life. At one point, he married a Mohawk woman, and she had twins. But then when he was buried, he was listed as unmarried. So I don't know what happened there. And it was a really pretty tense situation between he and Washington, even though we just got a little glimpse of it in this. He really did try to undermine Washington at every turn, as far as what I've read. He was, got his men up against him and then representatives to the government. He would try to get them, rally them, their support, and things like that, because he felt he was the better candidate for that.
Was the reason that Jamie gave the reason that, did they say that in what you read, that he had commanded men in more countries, and George Washington had only commanded men in the
Well, it didn't really,
colonies?
what I read didn't really give the reasons why.
Okay.
But I would suspect that he probably felt that he was
more experienced.
I don't know if you noticed, but in the market setting, Lafayette says that he's brought a lot of things from home. He's brought cheeses, and one of the things he says is tripe. And for those who don't know what tripe is, it's the edible lining of the stomach of sheep, cows, and pigs.
Also,
and people actually eat that.
But goats don't have tripe, or lamb.
Pardon me?
I thought lamb and goats aren't tripe too.
Sheep.
I mean,
sheep. So it's like haggis.
I was thinking of that would cover mutton.
Goat. Okay.
Is that the same thing as haggis then?
No.
Okay.
No, haggis is, they take the sheep, or they take the is it a sheep stomach?
I thought they do bladder.
I
Don't
think
use
so.
a bladder?
No, that's
which dish is it that they use they stuff a bladder?
It's the French do a chicken in that, where they put a chicken inside of a bladder and then that into another organ, and it's layered, and then it's baked. I've never had it.
That sounds horrible. Like the French version of a turducken.
I don't like the idea of organ meats. Organs store too many toxins that I don't think I want to.
Although I love kidneys and I love liver.
Oh,
I know.
Well, it's.
We used to be forced to eat liver when I was little, and it was the worst thing I've ever.
It's like chewing on. I don't know. Something with stick in it is crunchy.
Well, I was a vegetarian. After starting med school, I became a vegetarian for many years. One anatomy class was enough for me.
Yeah, well, when you
it's not even so much is that when you're in anatomy and you're cutting through meat with humans that looks exactly like the meat of a cow or the meat of a pig, meat of it. I was like, I couldn't eat meat for a long time.
Yeah. Shot glasses were around beginning in the late 1700s. So they were just in time to do that toast. And they probably originated in Germany. It looks like that they were made German glass originally. And then they became very widespread, and there's the sizes of them are dependent upon the country that you're in. I talked about the Brotherhood of the Blade, and I think that's it. Yeah.
So, Carmen, in the last 712, you said you wondered if Lord John Grey and Watson Smith had a little thing. And Sally says they did, and that it was in the book. So you picked up on that, and you were right. And she said,
because I didn't remember it.
yeah, no, me neither. And she said that he, even in the book, is, you know, in his kind of drunken whatever, he's thinking what it might happen if they, you know, kind of hook up in the tent. So you picked up on that. Very good.
Oh, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. I remember that scene now.
Okay.
Right. I just didn't remember the name because I'm rotten on names.
Okay. Then a couple people commented, Terry and Donna Marie, on Lord John Grey's age, because Antoinette said, why is he not aging? And everyone else says, well, he is, in the book, I think it's a little bit different in the show, but in the book, Jamie is 8 years older than Lord John Grey.
I was going to say 10, but
it's actually 8. I looked it up. I looked up their birthdays. But yeah, so when we first see him, he's a kid, and they have that scene where he breaks his arm. Well, Claire, the cougar, Claire, is 13 to 14 years older than Lord John Grey. So, you know, she married a youngie.
Fatal snatcher.
Then Ruth called out that, and none of us caught this in the moment, but the conversation between Claire and William in 712, we've skipped 713, so I keep trying to avoid saying last episode, but was actually a conversation between William and Jamie in the book, and it happens right after they go on an adventure together. And
which conversation are you talking about?
remember the scene with Claire and William he comes into the bedroom and asks,
oh yeah,
you know, was it rape and all that stuff?
Yes,
that conversation happens between William and Jamie.
Yes, it does. It's on it happens, if I remember right, in a warehouse.
Okay.
I
was trying not to spoil what they're doing.
Yeah, I think it.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't that part. It wasn't what they're going to do.
It's after what they did.
Yeah.
So
then Jamie was head of a kind of the manager of a warehouse, and William goes in and talks with him. And
so she was saying she felt that was kind of a pivotal or cementing moment, a moment when William gets a clear vision of who Jamie is. And she felt like, you know, she hoped that wasn't a missed opportunity for their relationship, and here I was saying, you know, they're not giving Claire Jamie's lines anymore. The exact episode, and it happened in the exact episode. Linda said that, and Donna Marie commented on that, Pocock is not their actual last name. That Jamie says, I think later on the ridge, that he doesn't want to call, he doesn't want to call Fanny because he's saying Fanny Pocock is a gimmick name that they give whores. So that's possible that that's not actually her name. We talked about that in 712. And Susan thinks that the comment by Claire when she said the apple doesn't fall far from the tree is taking the place of a comment by Jenny when she sees the destruction that William does in the stairwell She says, like father, like son, I see, God help us all. And so Susan thinks that that was put in to kind of take the place of that comment, which I thought
That's
was.
a good thought.
Susie had the exact same injury as Lord John Grey. And they put in a metal plate in her orbit, in this space to prevent exactly what you guys are talking about, of it slipping back in there.
Yeah, there's different kinds of prosthesis. There's silicone and metal and one other. I don't remember what it is now that I've read about, but yeah, they can seal that crack, but Claire didn't have anything like that to use.
Donna Marie pointed out that when Jamie asks, did he bugger you? He was saying, thinking in his mind, well, if he was pretending to be making love to me, the way he would actually do that would be through buggery. So did he bugger you?
Yeah, I just thought it was just because of his sexuality.
He knew he was
That's
gay.
what I thought. That's what I thought. But she's saying he actually, and she said that in the book, he says this to her.
Yeah.
Like she's saying, why are you asking me this? And he says, well, because if he's fucking me, how would he do that kind of thing? I don't know the exact words.
But I don't see the difference.
I would make sense.
Sorry.
It would make sense.
You don't see the difference?
No,
I said that would make sense.
I'm saying the reason that I thought that he said it that way was because Lord John is a gay man, and Jamie knows how they have sex, or at least some of the ways that they have sex. And I think that was what prompted him to say, to ask, is that the way he had sex with you?
No, but I'm saying a little bit more, something more, which is.
I know what you're saying. I'm saying I don't see
I think it's
that.
both. I think it could be both. I don't think it has
Okay.
to be one or the other.
Okay, we're ready for favorite lines.
Well, I liked Hal's comment that in response to Lord John saying, well, about the American colonies and its relationship with England. And he said, well, I wouldn't want to kill my son, because he disagrees with him. And Hal says, well, you only have one. I certainly have wanted to kill one or more of mine upon occasion.
That's right. He has 3 sons, right?
Yes, and a daughter. And I just thought that was hilarious. It was so droll,
Just quickly, one thing, do you guys notice, do you think Jane looks like Sophie at all? Sylvia? I think they resemble each other.
She reminds me more of
I wonder if that's intentional.
Jane and Sophie. Jane and
Bree.
I think she reminds me more of of course I'm blanking, Ian's mom.
Jenny?
The original Jenny.
I don't see that, but I do see in some of her facial features look similar between the two of them.
Bree and her.
Bree and Jane.
My next one is, my uncle says, the dead stand at your back when you go into battle. You carry your woman with you. This is you, my dove.
I like that one.
Yeah.
Even though it's extraordinarily crude, I thought Jane's comment, my cunt is worth 6 shillings, my mouth is worth 3, and my ass is a pound.
Yeah.
And that is so shocking. And I'm sure, that it probably was not inaccurate. And I just thought that in kind of a nutshell, she she is playing that part extraordinarily well, in my opinion, where she has this back and forth between the core person, which I think she's quite tender, and the guard that she has, the toughness that she's had to build around herself to protect her and her sister. And this was just a really cutting way of letting, she's embarrassed that she doesn't know how to me, that she's embarrassed that she doesn't know how to use money, but she's trying to explain, I've been in this situation since I was 10 years old. I don't know how to use it. You know, I know what it's worth in a brothel, but outside of that, I don't know what it's. And he's making assumptions, of course, because he thinks because she's a woman, she knows how to do laundry, she knows how to spend money, you know, she knows how to budget, that sort of thing. And she's telling him she doesn't know any of those things. So I think
She-
it's a real
Maybe-
reveal
but-
about her
but,
character.
Carmen,
Yeah.
maybe you can explain this, how it is that she is where she was, doesn't know how to use money, but is quoting Latin.
Well, because we think that she's possibly from an educated family and then was separated from her parents at a young age. So they have these
Mm,
incongruencies in their characters.
Yeah, I think Diana is actually skillful at that. I think her characters have a lot of paradoxes in them. And I think she does it because we do as
Mhm.
people, that we all have things about us that are, I think, that are paradoxical. We're often blind to those things, but other people can see them in us. And sometimes they tell us,
Yeah.
you know, about them. And I think I think she's very astute about that. Well, I liked Ian when when she said what, he's come home, he's on the bed. She asks him something about you know, what he's been doing, and he said, "I saw but was not seen." That is really a succinct sentence in just a few words. It's just, I loved that line. I thought it was very good. I liked Jamie's comment, you didn't get used to it, which is the, you know, the title, believe me. And I think Lord John looks a little abashed, and he should, because Jamie is referring to his experience of Ardsmuir for, I don't know, was it 3 or 4 years he was there or something like that. It was a long time. And
Yeah.
it was gruesome conditions that he suffered there. And so I think he was saying, you know, Lord John is a little flippant about his getting his shackles on again, you know, and saying, well, I could get used to this, you know. And Jamie's like, nah, no. If it's real, you don't ever get used to it. I liked Lord John's exchange with Percy when he says, which one are you sleeping with, the Baron or the sister? And Percy goes, both on occasion. I thought that was.
He looked like he thought about giving him some bullshit answer, and then he was just like, well, both.
Oh, he knows me too well. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to let him.
Oh yeah, I don't have to be in character anymore.
Yeah, there's one other that I miss. It was in the book, and I love this 2 sentences. Germond says it, and he says, "You mustn't hit him again, Grandpierre," meaning Lord John. "You mustn't do that again. He's a very good man, and I'm sure he won't take Granny to bed anymore now that you're home to do it."
That's right. That's a great one. That's a great one.
I miss that, you know,
Yeah.
because he's not in there either.
I think they're doing a good job with the tall task that they have, and having the storylines have through lines and the characters have through lines. I mean, totally understandable they had to cut people out, even though we do miss them. So let's do standouts.
absolutely, Fanny. I mean, I should do. I've always been bad at knowing the names of actors for roles, but she's just, I mean, phenomenal. She steals every scene she's in.
Okay. Florrie Mae Wilkinson is her name.
Lori, how's it?
Florrie, like a flower,
That's-
Florrie, Mae Wilkinson.
That's interesting. That's a very southern name.
It is.
It is a very Southern name, and I think she's Scottish.
Mhm.
I'm not sure though. I'll have to do some
A
looking
lot
up
of
about
a lot of
that.
people in the South have May as their middle name.
Mhm.
Mother-in-law is one of them.
Mine, I really noticed the music. I loved that theme. Sylvia and Charles, William and Jane. The writing, loved the characters in this episode. Um, I'm gonna call it the casting director because I really think that there are maybe a handful over all these years of casting that I don't agree with. The majority is just stellar.
Mhm.
And I think that's Suzanne and Simone are the casting directors. Also had Fanny on my list, Flory May Wilkinson, um, Sylvia, Charles, David, Izzy, Sam, and Cat.
That's
Carm.
that's covers mine.
That's your list?
I do think that Charles, and I'm not saying this right, it's phonetically Crehang or Crehange as Lafayette. I thought he was, I looked up a photo or a painting of Lafayette. He looks very similar. And I can just imagine that he was 21 at the time, the same age, well, a little older, I guess, than William, but very young fellow. And he's made quite a splash in the Americas. And I found out, I meant to say this in BTS, but I found out that he's buried in a cemetery in Paris, but the dirt that covers him is from Bunker Hill.
Wow.
So
That's
he really committed himself to the American cause. There's no doubt about it. And he lived quite an interesting life after the Revolutionary War was over. And I won't go into that, but I just think this fellow kind of brought him to life for me. I've never, been curious about him, but it caused me to go and read about him.
he was very charismatic
Very.
Very,
with some eyelashes.
yeah, serious eyelash and a nice smile,
Yeah.
and his cheery attitude.
Hmm. Okay, let's go to big themes. Kathy, did you have a big theme?
Protection. It was just like I think everyone in each scene was driven by protecting somebody. Either Jamie trying to protect his men, um, Claire trying to protect Lord John's eye, the end of Lord John going to protect William, and Jane protecting her younger sister, then William protecting her, so it's just one series of protection after another. And I think the whole series, the whole episode was driven by that.
Very astute.
They didn't
Percy,
protect us.
even
I have to say
Percy,
one thing. Oh yeah,
even
Percy,
Percy protecting.
Percy and Cal, and it was just a lot of protecting.
Yeah.
Um, Lafayette protecting Washington against Lee. There's just a lot of it. But one thing we were not protected. I missed my walls. I mean, I'm just so disappointed. I look and I look and I look trying to find something interesting to look at, and it's just like I miss. To me, the set was another character, and that's gone.
Yeah.
It's really gone. But
Yeah,
anyway.
I mean, the costumes are beautiful, but they're not authentic in terms of how they're show up in the it looks more like a play. And the walls, I thought of you looking at those green walls and you having your feelings hurt by the
There was
you
one
know,
interesting gray, like a light gray wall that had some nice molding, and it had looked like it had shiplap or something similar, which is like, but other than that,
Yeah. Um, One thing that Metin, when I looked back for that tweet from Metin about the scene in Faith from that we talked about last in 712, I also found a tweet from him where somebody was asking about, like, saying it's so authentic, how do you do it? And he said a big reason is not only the costumes and the sets, but back in those first seasons, they used candlelight, true, real candlelight as lighting. And I think that really lent an authenticity to the scenes that we don't have today.
You remember Castle Leoc, those big chandeliers? They were all candles that were lit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think they would
Remarkable.
do a little extra lighting on the people's faces, but the ambient light was candlelight.
Yeah,
So,
and that could make a huge difference.
right.
And also they use glaze.
But I think John Gary Steele said that part of the reason he used that glaze was to how the candlelight would work with the walls.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So my big theme, I thought about protection. I actually did. I didn't take it as far as you did. So I'm glad that you did that one. But I kept coming back to how much Jamie is carrying in this episode.
Yeah.
There's an impending war. He's a leader. He's 300 souls, men he doesn't know, which he's never commanded before. Many will die. He knows war. Many of them don't. He's just been re-traumatized with PTSD, like just a few days before this. Claire has this new relationship with Lord John Grey. William is imploding, and he's on the opposite side. Bree and Roger are gone back to the future. Fergus and Marsley are gone. He's just lost his brother-in-law, who's his best friend in life, and his brother. He's just left Scotland and his sister and all his family there. Doesn't know if he'll ever see them again. Young Ian is like Anne Claire, but young Ian is the one constant for him that is like nothing's changed. But just if you look at all of that going on for Jamie, and there's the episode doesn't, I mean, the show doesn't really directly, sometimes it'll say, like the line where he says, must I carry everyone's weakness? Can I never have my own? He says in season 2. And sometimes we see what his burden is, but there's also just this expectation that he's Jamie, so he can handle all this stuff and just keep moving forward. And that's just what I don't know. That's what I saw when I looked at this episode.
It's good. So I saw two big themes for me. One is that sometimes circumstances demand that we do the unthinkable. We'll make statements in our lives that we're never going to do such and such, or we're always going to do such and such. And then we find ourselves eating our own words and having to eat crow sometimes. But I do think that it's probably really a good practice in life not to make sweeping statements or have general expectations that you're never going to do something, because we can find ourselves in situations where we in fact have to do something because it demands it of us, even when we don't want to have to do it. And I saw that in several different parts of this. Jane, Jamie, Lord John, not so much Claire in this one, but Claire in some of the other ones recently. The other one is that some trauma stays with us our entire life and can be called back rather quickly. And I think that's really what's these people are saying about Jamie, for instance, is that the trauma that he experienced was so horrifying and so painful that it came back to him so swiftly under those circumstances. And I do think that those kinds of traumas color who we become. They influence who we become, how we think, how we process information, how we relate to others, that sort of thing. So those are the two big themes that I took from the episode.
I thought about that with not only Jamie holding Lord John Grey's head when he probably never wants to touch him again, but then
Claire was just
yeah, she's like, get over it, get over there, hold his head. But he also sent him to rescue his son. So I mean, it's like he had to.
Our son, he said,
Yeah,
go save our
to
son.
quickly just get,
I think that statement where he said, go save our son, he was acknowledging the joint caring for this young man and what John's contribution to him is. And that holds out a little hope for me about their relationship, that they will be able to reconcile at some point.
Yeah, well, I think when he said, that bloody Englishman bandaged me with his friendship, that and also understanding what he did for Claire and who he is to William, I saw that as an olive branch when he said our son.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are some wrestling, opposing things going on there with Jamie and Lord John Grey. We did it.
We did it when Kathy's still awake.
And Kathy's
barely,
still
I'm
awake.
like barely still awake.
Well, it's 11 o'clock on your end of the.
Yeah.
Well, Happy New Year, ladies.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you.
Thanks for a great discussion.
And we've got at least get one. Well, I guess we've gotten one in with all four of us.
We did only one.
We did one with all four of us. Yeah.
Sounds good. Love you.
Thank you for getting it together. Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Love you. Happy New Year.
Love you all.
Bye.
And we have to go to something. Some type of.
We will.
Like some Comic-Con or some sort something.
Something to get together. Yeah.
All right.
We'll do it. Okay. Bye. Love you. Good to see you. Beautiful.
Bye.